advice from me and Jodie, just about, preparing for your interviews and then what it's going to be like on the day. So for preparing for your interviews, from us, we would say make sure you read up about the curriculum for the university that you're interviewing at. I used to have like little Google Docs with each uni that I was applying at, and I'd make sure I knew facts that were specific to that uni. Um, and every single one of them have their own special website, and they really like to, boast about their unique selling points for that uni. So honestly, it's pretty easy to find, and they really love it when you talk about their uni specifically and why you want to specifically go there. I'd also say make sure that you're up to date with medical related news. Um, so even if it's just like a few articles that you're reading every few days, I used to have the BBC News app downloaded on my phone, and I would have my settings set specifically to medical related articles, just so I wouldn't miss anything. And even if you're just reading for 5-10 minutes a day, that is more than enough, because sometimes they do like to ask that in interviews if you've read anything interesting recently, and it just gives you something to talk about. Also, if you just have an understanding of the four ethical pillars and just how to apply them to the different scenarios they give you, you aren't expected to know every single thing or how to specifically have the right answer, because sometimes with ethics there isn't a right answer. But if you're able to justify anything you say and you can relate it back to these ethical pillars, they love that. They'll go insane for that. Also, having examples um, ready to show any skills that you're talking about is really good. So Glasgow especially really like it when you say you've developed a certain skill like teamworking or communication, and then you go on to talk about how you've developed that specific skill and what you've learned from that experience. And even if you have a little bit of time at the end, you could also say how that relates to being a doctor or being a medical student. Also, just keeping track of different question types and make sure you bullet point ideas on how to answer questions. So don't write out, like screeds and screeds of writing. Just don't try and memorize a bunch of stuff. Just have like a rough idea of what you're going to say, but don't try and sit there and memorize paragraphs of writing. I mean, keeping track of different questions is good because it makes sure that you've covered every single point. Also, make sure you use all the resources that you can find. So this could be, like books people are selling or university websites or sometimes social media. I know when I was doing my interviews, because it was during COVID, social media really did, it was really, really helpful. There was loads of different Instagram accounts and people setting up websites that, they were getting all this information, and it was really, really helpful. And, university websites are such a good place to start anyway. And then finally, make sure you ask your friends and family for help if you've had any friends who in the past have applied to medicine, or even people who are in your year group right now. You could practice mock interviews with them, practice mock interviews with your family. Make sure that, you're using all the help you can get. So just advice on the week before your interview, have a plan of how you're going to get there. So make sure that you know when you're going, know where you're going, and know what time you have to be there for. Make sure you have all the parking sorted out, any transport links, and just make sure you're quickly, just even the night before, checking that, if you're taking the train, that there's no cancellations or there's no other things, because I know currently ScotRail are always going on strike. So just make sure that you're always keeping an eye on that and have a backup plan for any transport issues, because sometimes things won't go to plan, but if you have a backup plan, then you'll be fine. Also plan a formal outfit, but make sure what you're wearing is comfortable, because you want to be comfortable when you speak and when you talk, and you don't want other things disturbing you or distracting you or just making you more anxious. So whatever you're wearing, make sure you're comfortable in it, that you feel confident in it, and that you're okay with wearing it. Just before you leave, check you have everything that you need to have. So if you have to take any IDs with you, your passport, your driving license, make sure you have that. And also make sure you've signed off on any confidentiality forms or anything else that the uni wants you to do beforehand. And if you're online, just the week before, make sure you've done a test run on Zoom, or if they've given you a link for a different platform that you're using, just make sure that you've done a wee test run of that. Check that your camera is all fine, and make sure everything's clean in the background. If you need to move stuff in your room, it's best to do that a few days before rather than the day off. But yeah, I'm just going to hand over to Jodie now.
Okay, so just to finish up, so just thinking about so we've done the lead up, how you prepare, what you should be trying to do the week before. So on the day of the interview, turn up with plenty of time. You never know what's going to happen on the roads or on the trains or the buses. And the last thing you want is to be like extra stressed because you're already going to be anxious going to your interview. So leave as much time as you can. Have some water and snacks with you. I'm in my final year, so I interviewed a while ago when everything was all in person, and the days can be very long, especially if you've got some traveling. So make sure you've got some water, some snacks, things to keep you going, especially if you've got an interview that kind of runs over lunchtime. Just think about that. Try and find some ways to keep calm. I say to literally everyone that goes to the interviews, it is more than normal to be anxious. It's a very big thing that's happening. But hopefully with all the advice that we're kind of went through today, you feel a little bit more prepared, and just try and find some ways to keep calm, because you want to show the interviewers your best self. And it's harder to do that if you're really anxious. I think it's been mentioned in almost every single talk today, but smile, look at the interviewer, whether that's on Zoom or in person. Show that you are listening when you're not talking, so nod along, agree, etc. Speak clearly. Again, this has all been covered. It's just one of those basics that's good to just reiterate at the end. And talk in appropriate volume. In some cases, it happened at Glasgow, but Glasgow's still online. There might be situations where there's multiple interviews happening in one room, so it can get a little bit loud. So you obviously need to speak a little bit louder to make sure that they can hear you. But again, if you're doing a role play scenario that is maybe some breaking some bad news, you don't want to be shouting at the actor. So just suit your voice to what's happening. And with the MMIs, if you have a bad station, it's easier said than done, but draw a line under it. If one goes terribly, and I can put my hands up and say that in the MMIs, there's some of mine were absolutely terrible. But that interview stays in that station, and the next station, the interviewer has no idea what happened. They might think that you've done absolutely perfectly up until now. So you don't want to sort of let that roll into the next station and let it impact other ones. And as we've said, if you are online, make sure everything is working. Have backup plans for your backup plans. You just don't want technology to be the thing that gets in the way. And then after the interview, again, something that I say to everyone, when Glasgow was in person, I helped out with the interviews a few times because they just had like student volunteers. And I would like literally always say, it is so normal to feel exhausted, especially some of the longer ones. You have been like selling yourself for like 40 minutes, an hour, and it's normal to come out of it and feel pretty done in. So try, and when you walk out of the interview, again, to draw a line, go home, try and relax, try and do something that's comforting, and try not overanalyze your answers. I'm sure a lot of you on here will already have experienced the student room. It is a blessing and a curse. Try and not compare yourself to other people, because there's nothing at the end of the day that you can do to change it. The student room is great for keeping up to date with certain things, but it is also a massive curse at times. And the outcomes of interviews take absolutely ages. There's loads of people that they're interviewing. They're interviewing people from the UK, they're interviewing people from abroad, and the whole process takes time. And it's often you're talking sort of 3 months after the interview that you have to wait to hear the outcome. So you have to try and be patient and try and not constantly think about it. The main focus is your grades that you will need if you are offered a place. That will be on condition of your grades. And that is us. So thank you very much for coming along tonight and staying on.